I sent my stepdaughter $10,000 every month so she could live comfortably. But on Father's Day, she never showed up. When I called, she snapped and said, "I am having fun with my real dad. You can go and find your own daughter." I hung up, surprised and heartbroken. What happened next was rather unimaginable. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Anderson Moore from Miami. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I wasn't always the kind of man who gave freely. Life taught me discipline the hard way. Through sleepless nights, maxed out credit cards, and a stretch of 10 years working 6, sometimes 7 days a week to build a small real estate portfolio that eventually turned into something substantial. I didn't inherit money or connections. I earned everything from scratch. So, when I met Vanessa at a business seminar in Atlanta 12 years ago, I wasn't looking for love. I was looking for a break. She was smart, elegant, a few years younger, and carried the weariness of someone who'd been disappointed one too many times. She told me she was a single mom to a 10-year-old daughter named Kayla. Her ex, she said, had walked out when Kayla was barely 3, leaving behind only court dates and sporadic child support payments. I remember thinking, well, at least he left room for someone better. It sounds self-righteous now, but back then, I truly believed I could be the better man. Kayla was shy when I first met her. She clung to Vanessa's leg and avoided eye contact, as if the world had taught her not to trust too easily. I didn't push. I didn't come in with gifts or promises. Instead, I made breakfast on Sundays. I picked her up from school when Vanessa had meetings. I asked her about her drawings and sat through school plays where she barely whispered her lines. Slowly, she warmed up to me, not with big gestures, but with little things. She started calling me Pops when she was 13, unprompted. Vanessa teared up the first time she said it. "You're good for us," she whispered that night in bed. And I believed her. I married Vanessa the following year, and from that point on, I wasn't just her husband. I was Kayla's dad, at least in my heart. As the years went on and my business continued to grow, I made a promise to myself. Kayla would never want for anything. Not while I was around. I paid for her private school tuition, even when Vanessa said we could make do with public. I bought her first car when she turned 16, a modest Honda Civic, but brand new. I didn't want her worrying about breakdowns or maintenance. When college came, she chose an out-of-state art school that cost more than most people's mortgages. I didn't blink. If it's what makes her happy, I told Vanessa, we'll figure it out. I wired her an allowance every month, at first a few hundred, then gradually more. By the time she graduated and decided not to pursue a career right away, I was sending her $10,000 a month. It was supposed to be temporary, just until she found her footing. But months turned into years, and I never once asked her to pay it back. Looking back, I wonder if I was trying to buy love without realizing it. It didn't feel that way at the time. I genuinely believed I was investing in her future, in our relationship. Every time she'd visit, especially around the holidays, she'd smile, laugh, even hug me first. She'd call me when her car made a strange noise or when she got into an argument with a friend. I felt needed, and for a man who'd built his life around being useful, that meant everything. Vanessa and I had our occasional arguments, like any couple, but nothing that felt unmanageable. The foundation of our home felt solid, even when the storms hit. Or maybe I was just too busy patching the roof to notice the cracks in the walls. There was one thing, though, a little itch at the back of my mind that never fully went away. Kayla never called me Dad. Not once. Pops was affectionate, sure, but it always felt like a nickname, safe, distant. When her college graduation rolled around and they asked her to submit names for the announcement, she listed Vanessa and Gerald Simmons, father. I wasn't mentioned. Vanessa said it was a clerical error. I didn't push. I told myself it didn't matter. I knew who I was to her, or thought I did. But those little omissions started piling up like unpaid bills, small at first, then harder to ignore. Still, I kept giving. Every month, without fail, that money went out. $10,000. Enough for rent, utilities, groceries, even luxury if she was careful. When she texted that she needed a new laptop or that she was thinking of taking a trip to Paris for creative inspiration, I wired the funds without hesitation. Vanessa would sometimes suggest that maybe we should slow down, that we weren't helping her grow by cushioning everything. But her tone lacked conviction, and deep down, I think she enjoyed the ease of knowing her daughter would never struggle. And well, I enjoyed the illusion that I was the reason for that ease, that I was the steady hand in a life that had seen too much chaos. I never talked much about my own family. My parents were gone. I had one brother in Michigan I spoke to once or twice a year. My world, for all intents and purposes, revolved around Vanessa and Kayla. They were my orbit, my investment, my identity. So, when Father's Day rolled around this year, I expected the same small tradition we'd established. Kayla would stop by, sometimes with a small gift, usually with takeout from that Thai place we both liked. We'd sit on the back porch and talk about nothing in particular, and I'd go to bed feeling like I mattered, like I'd built something real. But this year, she didn't show up. I woke up early, even ironed the new polo shirt Vanessa had given me the week before. She said it brought out the gray in my beard, made me look distinguished. I made coffee, sat by the window, and waited. 9 a.m. turned to noon. I texted her. No reply. By 3, I started to worry. Not because I thought something was wrong, but because I was starting to realize she might simply not come. Vanessa was quiet, unusually so. She kept glancing at her phone, typing something now and then. I asked if she'd heard from Kayla. She said, "I'm sure she's just busy." By 6, I couldn't take it anymore. I called. The phone rang twice before she answered. The background was loud. Music, laughter, voices I didn't recognize. She sounded drunk, or maybe just carefree in a way I hadn't heard before. "Hey," I said gently. "Are you okay?" She laughed. "Why wouldn't I be? I was just wondering if you were coming by today." There was a pause. Then she said, "Oh, right. Father's Day." My stomach tightened. "Yeah." She snorted. "I'm with my real dad. We're having a blast. You should, I don't know, go find your own daughter or something." The line went quiet after that. I didn't say another word. I didn't need to. I just hung up. I don't remember standing up, but I must have because suddenly I was in the kitchen, just staring at the counter like it had answers. The phone was still in my hand, screen dimmed, her voice echoing in my ears. "I'm with my real dad. Go find your own daughter." I stood there for a long time, my thoughts jammed together like traffic on a freeway after a wreck. I'd heard insults before, even ungrateful things from tenants or clients who didn't like the outcome of a deal, but this wasn't just rude. It was annihilation. Years of birthday parties, doctor's appointments, art supplies, and quiet, fatherly pride, reduced to a line tossed out like trash. I didn't feel anger first. No, the first emotion that came was confusion, a kind of stunned disbelief that paralyzed me. Because how do you grieve someone who isn't dead? How do you mourn a connection that clearly only existed in your head? Vanessa found me still standing there a few minutes later. I hadn't moved. I think she knew something was wrong the second she saw my face, but she didn't ask what happened. Instead, she gently reached for the phone. "Did you talk to her?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her. And I think in that moment, she saw something unravel inside me. Something permanent. "What did she say?" she asked, voice quieter now. I shook my head. "She's with him. Her father. Her real one." I forced the words out like they were made of glass, each syllable slicing a little deeper into my throat. Vanessa looked away, then back at me. She didn't look surprised. Not entirely. And that broke something else inside me. I whispered. "She told me to go find my own daughter." My voice cracked on the last word. Vanessa didn't cry. She didn't comfort me. She just whispered. "She's been reconnecting with him lately." I didn't know it would go like this. I should have yelled. I should have demanded answers. But I was too tired, too hollow. I went upstairs and sat on the edge of the bed we'd shared for over a decade. That bedroom had seen so many ordinary nights. Pillow talk, Netflix, shared colds, morning alarms. It felt haunted now, like something had died in it. I stared at the closet doors, at the neatly arranged ties I hadn't worn since semi-retiring, and all I could think was, she never saw me as a father. I saw myself as hers, but she never returned the gaze. And that realization wasn't just painful, it was humiliating. I'd been played. Maybe not deliberately, maybe not with cruelty, but used all the same. A prop in someone else's story. A generous fool with a wallet and a need to be needed. I went to my home office and sat at my desk. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before they began moving. Fast, precise, without hesitation. I opened the banking apps. Kayla's name appeared everywhere. Joint credit cards. Automatic transfers. A rental property in her name that I'd been paying the taxes and insurance on for 2 years. I canceled the monthly allowance first. Then I froze her cards. Then I closed them entirely. She wouldn't know until her next swipe. The final move was the property. I initiated the process to transfer ownership back to my name. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even anger. It was clarity. Cold, sharp clarity that came from knowing I was no longer responsible for someone who had never considered me family. If she wanted her real dad, she could live on whatever he provided, if anything. Exactly 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Vanessa. I let it buzz 3 times before picking up. What did you do? She shouted before I could speak. Her voice was shrill, panicked. Kayla just called me crying. She said her cards are declined, her rent account's locked. What the hell are you doing? I didn't flinch. I did what I should have done years ago, I said. My voice was steady, eerily calm. I stopped pretending I mattered. That set her off. You're being petty. She was just being honest with you. Why are you punishing her for telling you the truth? I laughed, short, bitter. The truth? The truth is that I raised someone else's child, gave her everything, and she couldn't even give me a phone call on Father's Day. She spat in my face and laughed. And you let it happen. Her silence on the other end said everything. Then the venom came. You're a cruel, selfish bastard, she hissed. You only gave because it made you feel good. The moment it didn't, you pulled the plug. I didn't deny it. Maybe, I said, but you stood by while she took, and never once asked her to give anything back. Not love, not respect, not even decency. There was a pause. Then she muttered, You're going to regret this. You're destroying your own family. I looked out the window. The sky was turning gold with the fading light. No, I said quietly. I'm finally acknowledging that I never had one. I hung up. I didn't cry. Not then. I just sat there, surrounded by the quiet hum of the ceiling fan and the soft rustle of leaves outside. It was strange, feeling so empty and yet so heavy at the same time. Like grief and relief were coexisting in the same room. I felt betrayed, yes, but I also felt free. The weight of pretending, of performing love that was never fully returned, had been lifted. And in its place was a silence I could finally breathe in. A silence not filled with obligations or expectations. Just stillness. That night, I slept on the guest bed. Vanessa didn't come looking for me. I wasn't in the mood to explain things to another person who might pretend to understand what it felt like to pour 15 years of your life into a family that turned around and told you they never saw you as part of it. The moment the pen hit paper, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not yet, but a detachment, like my body had finally caught up with what my heart already knew. I wasn't part of their story anymore, and I didn't want to be. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I sat in my car and stared at the dashboard for what felt like an hour. The air conditioner hummed low, a soft mechanical sound that reminded me of hospital waiting rooms and long car rides to visit college campuses Kayla never ended up attending. It's funny how our brains attach memories to sounds. I thought about all the times she'd called me at odd hours, flat tires, bad breakups, panic over missed rent. I'd always answered, always helped. I had been reliable, dependable. And it wasn't about money, not really. It was about being chosen. I had chosen her. Every single day, in ways her biological father never did. And now, she had chosen him. One phone call, one cruel comment, and suddenly years of fatherhood vanished like fog on a windshield. The injustice of it gnawed at me, not because she owed me anything, but because I had believed we were something more than a transaction. When I got home that evening, Vanessa was sitting on the couch, wine glass in hand, the TV playing some reality show I didn't recognize. She didn't look at me, just said, You locked her out of the rental account. I dropped my keys on the entry table and replied, I locked myself out of her life first. She scoffed, but didn't argue. That told me everything I needed to know. There was no fight left in her. Not for me. Not for our marriage. Only for Kayla. She wasn't my partner anymore. She was Kayla's mother first, and I'd never been more aware of that divide than in that moment. She's devastated. Vanessa continued, swirling the wine like it made her point stronger. You blindsided her. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said, she blindsided me. On Father's Day. Of all days. The glass paused mid-swing. She told the truth. She repeated, like that made it better. Like truth was some sacred thing even when it's used as a weapon. I didn't respond. I walked past her, into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stared out the window into the backyard. The garden I built with my own hands. The one Kayla once helped me dig trenches for, giggling when we hit a patch of worms. She was 12 then. She'd said, "You're better than my real dad. He never does anything like this." I should have known then that love built on comparisons isn't love at all. It's conditional admiration. A lease agreement, not a deed. And the lease had expired the moment I stopped being the source of comfort and cash. The next morning, she sent me a text. No greeting. No apology. Just, I can't believe you'd do this. You're acting like a child. I stared at the screen for a long time. That was her takeaway. Not remorse. Not understanding. Just blame. She hadn't called since our last conversation, hadn't tried to explain or reach out in any meaningful way. This was it. A tantrum dressed in indignation. I didn't respond. She followed up a few hours later with, I thought you loved me. Guess I was wrong. That one stung, not because I doubted my love, but because she'd weaponized it. Turned it into a tool of guilt. As if my love meant I was supposed to accept being treated like nothing. I wrote a reply, deleted it. Wrote another. Deleted that too. Then finally, I sent, I loved you like my own. But now I see you never saw me as yours. That's the part that hurts most. She didn't reply. By that weekend, the whispers started. Friends from our church texted Vanessa, asking if we were okay. Someone on Facebook posted a vague status about some men needing control more than connection, and I knew it was directed at me. Even Vanessa's sister, whom I'd always gotten along with, sent me a cold message saying, you didn't have to go nuclear. But nobody asked why. Nobody asked what it felt like to be erased in real time by the very people you'd supported without question. It didn't matter that I'd paid for vacations, therapy, braces, and that art retreat in Spain. The only thing anyone saw was the withdrawal, not the betrayal that led to it. That's the thing about generosity. It's invisible until you take it away. Then suddenly, everyone notices. One night, I got a call from my brother, Marcus. We weren't close, but he'd heard through the grapevine. Heard you went full scorched earth, he said, half joking. I told him the whole story, the way you do when you need someone who doesn't have a stake in the outcome. When I got to the part about Father's Day, he went quiet for a long moment. Then he said, you know what your problem was? You thought doing right by her meant she'd love you back. But love doesn't come with receipts. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I know, I said, but I thought maybe. I thought being there would count for something. He sighed. It did, just not in the way you hoped. Some people take what they're given and still want more. You stopped giving. That's all they see now. It was the most honest conversation I'd had in weeks. The next day, I began moving my things into the guest room permanently. Vanessa didn't protest. She avoided me for the most part, staying out late, texting constantly. The silence between us had turned into a third roommate. Loud, awkward, impossible to ignore. We spoke only when necessary. No more shared meals. No more check-ins. Just the cold rhythm of two people waiting for paperwork to make their detachment official. And yet, even in that silence, I felt lighter. For the first time in years, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't performing. I was simply done. It's funny how quiet the house became once I stopped trying to make it feel like a home. No more fresh coffee in the morning. No more, how do you sleep? As Vanessa shuffled into the kitchen wearing that old, oversized t-shirt from our trip to Charleston. No more dinners with music playing low in the background. She moved around like a tenant now, silent, distant, robotic, and I let her. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't wait up anymore. I'd catch glimpses of her sometimes by the front window, lit by the glow of her phone screen, thumbs moving fast, lips tight with concentration. I never asked who she was talking to. I no longer cared. And that indifference, it scared me a little. Because when apathy settles in where love used to live, it doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It comes quietly, like fog seeping under the door, until one day you look around and realize you can't see anything clearly anymore. One night, she finally spoke. It had been nearly a week since the last real conversation. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, the dishwasher humming softly behind her. "Kayla's thinking of moving back in with her dad," she said. Her tone was neutral, almost casual, like she was reporting the weather. I didn't look up from my coffee. "Makes sense," I said. "He's the real one, after all." She flinched, just slightly. "You don't have to be cruel." I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because the irony was unbearable. "Cruel?" I repeated. "You think I'm cruel?" I set the mug down gently. "You stood there and let her spit in my face on Father's Day. You didn't defend me. You didn't even look surprised." Her face twisted, like she was trying to conjure guilt, but couldn't quite feel it. "She was being honest," she said again. That line. That goddamn line. I'd heard it too many times, as if honesty made disrespect noble. I walked past her, heading to the garage to escape, but I stopped at the doorway. "You know what I think, Vanessa?" I set my back to her. "I think you liked that she kept me on a leash. I think you enjoyed being the one in the middle, letting me pay, letting her take, and never once checking either of us. Because as long as I kept providing, you didn't have to confront the fact that your daughter only loves conditionally." The words hung in the air like smoke. She didn't follow me. I didn't expect her to. That night, I drove for hours. No destination. Just the road, the hum of the engine, and my thoughts unraveling in long threads of what if, and how the hell did we get here? Sometime around midnight, I parked outside a 24-hour diner and went inside. I sat at the counter like I used to in my 20s when I was broke and needed to feel the world spinning around me. A waitress named Carla poured me coffee and said, "You look like someone who's figuring things out." I gave a tired smile. Something like that. She was in her 50s, sharp eyes, kind mouth. We talked for a bit. Nothing deep, just the weather, the city, the price of eggs. But even that small connection felt more real than the forced interactions I'd been having at home. When I left, she said, "Good luck, sweetheart. Whatever it is, make sure you don't lose yourself in it." It hit me harder than I expected, because that's exactly what had happened. I had been losing myself, little by little, in the effort to hold a family together that was never really mine to begin with. The next morning, I opened my email to find a message from Kayla. The subject line read, "Closure." I hesitated before clicking, heart pounding despite myself. Inside, the message was short. No greeting, no warmth. Just, "I'm moving out of the apartment by the end of the month. I don't want anything else from you. I hope this makes you happy." No apology, no acknowledgement, just cold severance. Like a business transaction ending in bitterness. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling the weight of those words settle in my chest. Not because I wanted her to ask for forgiveness, but because it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. I had been a placeholder, a sponsor, not a father. That afternoon, I called my lawyer and expedited the divorce proceedings. I told him I didn't want alimony. I didn't want to fight over furniture or accounts. I just wanted out, clean and final. He agreed to move things forward, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something resembling forward motion. That night, Vanessa came into the guest room without knocking. She looked tired, her makeup smeared from what might have been tears or just the weight of too many sleepless nights. "Are you really doing this?" she asked. "Divorcing me over one fight?" I looked up from the book I wasn't really reading. "It wasn't one fight," I said. "It was 15 years of me pouring everything I had into a family that never saw me as one of them. And on the one day meant to honor fathers, I got told I wasn't one." She sat down on the edge of the bed, but I shifted away slightly. She noticed. "I didn't mean for it to get this bad," she said softly. I sighed. But it did. And the worst part is, I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Maybe she didn't. Maybe I didn't either. But that didn't change the truth. Love doesn't survive on silence and obligation. It needs nourishment, respect. And once those things are gone, no amount of shared history can rebuild it. She didn't say anything else. Just stood, looked at me one last time, and walked out. The click of the door behind her felt louder than it should have. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through old photos, family vacations, holidays, random moments frozen in time. Kayla on her graduation day, arms slung around my shoulders. Vanessa and I at a dinner party, laughing about something I can't remember now. It all looked so real, but I realized that photos lie. Or at least, they only tell part of the truth. They capture smiles, not silences. Poses, not pain. I stared at those images and felt nothing but fatigue. Not nostalgia, not grief. Just exhaustion from pretending those moments were the whole story. The first voicemail came on a Wednesday afternoon while I was cleaning out the garage. I hadn't checked my phone all day, and when I finally glanced at it, there it was, one missed call, one message, from a number I didn't recognize. I hesitated before pressing play. The voice that came through was unmistakable, even after all this time. Deep, a little arrogant, and far too casual. "Hey, this is Gerald, Kayla's dad. Her real dad, I guess you'd say. I think we should talk, man to man. This whole thing's gotten out of hand. She's upset. Vanessa's upset. It'd be good if you could be the bigger person here. Call me back." I stood in the middle of the garage, hands still dusty from lifting boxes, and listened to that message again. Then again. My chest tightened with every replay. The bigger person? That man had disappeared for over a decade, popped in and out of her life like a ghost who couldn't be bothered, and now he was asking me to fix things? I deleted the voicemail without responding. I didn't trust myself to speak without breaking something. Later that night, I told my brother about the message over dinner at a small diner we'd started frequenting. Simple food, no expectations, the kind of place where silence felt comfortable. Marcus leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. "Unreal," he muttered. "You give a kid 15 years of your life, thousands of dollars, every ounce of energy you had, and this deadbeat calls you like you're the problem?" I nodded, swallowing the knot in my throat. He thinks this is a misunderstanding. Like I grounded her for staying out too late. Marcus laughed, bitterly. "Man, if that voicemail doesn't prove you were never seen as the father, I don't know what does." He paused, then added, "But you were, you know. No matter what she says. You acted like a father. That counts for something. But did it?" That question haunted me more than I cared to admit. I kept replaying my time with Kayla. Not just the big milestones, but the small moments. Teaching her to parallel park in the high school parking lot. Staying up late to help her edit a college essay. Leaving work early to take her to urgent care when she had a fever that wouldn't break. Those memories weren't fake. They weren't inventions. I'd been present, consistent, loving, and still, she could erase all of it with a single sentence on a phone call. "I'm with my real dad." Like everything I'd done had been a placeholder until he decided to reappear. That wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. And that's what cut deepest. Not that she chose him, but that she discarded me in the process. A few days later, I got a text from Vanessa. "Can we talk?" Short, direct, cold. I replied, "Only in person." She agreed to meet at the house the following evening. By then, she had already moved into her sister's place temporarily, claiming it was less tense for everyone. I didn't argue. The house had become a mausoleum of false promises and broken bonds. I had no desire to fight over territory that no longer felt like mine. When she arrived, she looked worn out, hair pulled back in a loose bun, dark circles under her eyes, no jewelry. She sat down across from me at the dining table, folding her hands like a negotiation was about to take place. "Kayla's hurting," she began. "She feels abandoned." I didn't respond. I let the silence settle, heavy and deliberate. When she realized I wasn't going to fill it, she continued. "I know things were said that can't be unsaid, but cutting her off, it was cruel." I took a breath. Measured. Steady. Cruel as telling a man who raised you that he's not your real dad. Cruel as laughing about it. Cruel as choosing a biological stranger over the person who's been there for everything. Vanessa flinched. She didn't mean it like that. I shook my head. "Don't do that. Don't spin this." She meant every word. And the worst part is, you backed her. You let her say it. You defended her. She looked down at her hands. She's confused. She's 25. Still figuring things out. I laughed, incredulous. At 25, I was working 2 jobs and helping my brother raise his kids after his wife left. Confused isn't an excuse. It's a cover. Vanessa didn't reply. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, bank statements, property details, some joint investments. "Let's talk logistics," she said quietly. "Let's make this clean." So we did. The conversation that followed was sterile, almost businesslike. We divided assets, agreed on timelines. She didn't fight for anything. I didn't either. There was no point. Everything that mattered had already been broken. What remained were just items, numbers, titles. At the end of the meeting, she stood and said, "I never meant to hurt you." I looked at her, not with anger, but with a weariness that came from too many years of pretending we were building something real. "I know," I said, "but you did anyway. And that's the thing about damage. It doesn't need to be intentional to be permanent." Later that week, I bumped into an old neighbor while picking up groceries. He was polite, the way people are when they know something but aren't sure how to bring it up. Eventually, he said, "I saw Kayla's post on Facebook about being cut off by someone who was never real family. That wasn't about you, was it?" I smiled tight-lipped. "She can say what she wants. I know the truth." He nodded, then hesitated. "For what it's worth, we always saw you as her dad." That stuck with me longer than I expected. It didn't fix anything, but it softened the edges of my bitterness, even if only for a while. The real shift came when I started journaling, something I hadn't done since college. I began writing down everything. Every memory. Every moment I questioned myself. Every time I gave Kayla the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't for anyone else. Just for me. To reclaim my narrative. To remind myself that I wasn't crazy, or cruel, or selfish. I had loved them. Deeply. And I had been loved back, but only when it was easy. Only when it was convenient. The minute I needed respect, or gratitude, or even basic acknowledgement, the illusion cracked. And once you see the cracks, you can't unsee them. There's a silence that settles over your life when the noise finally stops. Not the quiet of loneliness, but the kind that feels earned. Like walking through the ruins of a battlefield after the dust has cleared and knowing, deep in your bones, that you survived something. That's what life felt like in the weeks after Vanessa moved out for good and the divorce paperwork hit my inbox, finalized and signed without so much as a note. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate either. I just stared at the document, at the neatly typed names and dates and the phrase, "irreconcilable differences," and felt something inside me loosen. Not my heart, that had been unraveling for a while, but my grip, my need to hold on, to make sense of something that had never made sense to begin with. I had spent so many years trying to be something to someone who had already decided who I was not. And now, finally, I had stopped trying. I packed up Vanessa's things a few days after the divorce was official. Not out of spite, not even out of urgency, just necessity. Her perfume still lingered in the bathroom, soft and floral, and I couldn't keep smelling it every time I brushed my teeth. I folded her clothes neatly, wrapped her jewelry in tissue, and stacked everything in boxes labeled with Sharpie. No tears, just methodical motions, like closing down a business that had run out of funding. When I finished, I left the boxes by the front door and texted her to let her know they were ready. She replied a few hours later with a simple "thank you." No emojis, no sarcasm, just a sentence. That alone told me how far gone we were. We weren't even angry anymore. We were indifferent. And somehow, that hurt more than any fight we could have had. Kayla never reached out again. Not after the Facebook post, not after the voicemail from her father, not even when Vanessa moved in with her temporarily while she found a new place. That silence, though brutal at first, eventually became something I welcomed. It was proof that I had done the right thing. If your presence is only acknowledged when you're useful, then your absence becomes your final act of truth. I didn't block her. I didn't delete old messages or burn photos. I let them exist. Let the memories sit where they were. They didn't need to be erased, only reframed. She had made her choice, and I had finally made mine. Strangely, the person who helped me most during that time wasn't family or friends. It was a tenant. A young guy named Devin who'd been renting one of my smaller properties downtown. He was a graphic designer, early 30s, soft-spoken, always paid on time. We'd only interacted through email before, but one day he called about a plumbing issue, and when I showed up to check it out myself, we got to talking. Somehow, we ended up grabbing coffee after. I found myself telling him the whole story in pieces, maybe because he was a stranger, maybe because I knew he had no stake in any of it. When I told him about Kayla's words, his expression shifted. "Damn," he said. "That's ice cold. But honestly, you're better off. People who treat love like currency never stop counting what you owe." That sentence stuck with me, not just because it was blunt, but because it was true. I had spent years overpaying in a relationship where love was calculated, not felt. Eventually, word got around to the rest of our social circle. Some were surprised. Others admitted, in hushed tones, that they had seen it coming but didn't want to interfere. That stung in a different way, not because I needed rescuing, but because it reminded me how isolating denial can be. When you're committed to holding up a false image of a happy family, even the people closest to you won't challenge it. They'll smile at the dinner parties, like your generosity is limitless, like your patience is admirable, and then they'll whisper afterward about how lopsided everything looked. I couldn't blame them. I had ignored the signs too. But now, with the mask gone, I saw just how exhausted I had been trying to wear it. One morning, weeks after the final signatures, I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sun rise. The yard was quiet, dew clinging to the grass, the sky painted in soft oranges and grays. It was the first time I'd really sat still. No phone, no TV, no mental checklist running in the background. Sometimes it just means you stop bleeding over people who never once tried to stop the cut. A few days later, I ran into Carla, the diner waitress, again. She remembered my name, asked how I was holding up. I told her the truth. Better. Not healed, but free. She smiled and said, "Freedom's a good start." We shared a quiet moment. No expectations, no roles to perform. Just two people moving forward. It made me think, maybe love, the kind that lasts, doesn't begin with grand gestures. Maybe it begins with conversations in diners, with shared coffee, with honesty that isn't wrapped in guilt. So now here I am. Alone, but not lonely. Healing, but not bitter. I don't regret what I gave. I don't regret loving Kayla or marrying Vanessa. But I do regret waiting so long to draw the line. Boundaries don't mean you love someone less. They mean you finally love yourself enough to stop accepting less. And if there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that peace doesn't always come from being loved. It comes from no longer begging for it. If you've ever had to walk away from someone you loved because they only valued what you gave, not who you were, you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest part isn't losing them. It's realizing they never truly saw you in the first place. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more real stories about boundaries, betrayal, and healing. Your support helps these voices be heard. See you soon in the next story.